I was ready to kill them both when I found out that they were. But I'll start from the beginning. My name is Jason, I'm 38, and I'm just a regular guy from the suburbs. Emily, my wife, has been my world for over a decade. We have a little girl, Lily, who we love more than anything. I always thought that our family was a fortress, protected from all storms. But I was wrong. It all started with something small, like a small crack in the mirror. Emily started coming home late from work. Her excuses always sounded plausible. I was late for a meeting. My colleagues invited me to have coffee. At first glance, nothing unusual, but her eyes, those eyes that always radiated warmth, were now as cold as an autumn morning. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was stress or fatigue. I was working hard to provide for my family, so I felt guilty that maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to them. But something in my heart screamed that it was more than that. One evening, when she stayed out later than usual, I decided to ask her directly, "Are you sure you're okay?" Emily just gave me a quick glance and answered, "Of course, Jason. Why do you ask?" Her voice was steady, but it was like listening to a mechanical recording. She turned back to her phone, her fingers tapping nervously on the screen. This action was so familiar lately that I began to hate it. The phone had become a wall between us. A few days later, I noticed that Lily was hugging me more before bed for some reason. She asked why her mom didn't sing her lullabies like she used to. It was painful, but I just smiled and said that Mom must be very tired at work. But one night everything changed. I woke up in the middle of the night to hear her phone vibrating on the nightstand. Emily was sleeping next to me, breathing evenly. I've never been one to check on other people's stuff, but this time. I don't know why, but I picked up the phone. The message on the screen made my heart skip a beat. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. You are incredible." The sender was a number I didn't recognize. And then I realized she was cheating on me. I sat there in the darkness, clutching the phone, feeling something breaking inside me. But I didn't wake her up. I knew that if I said a word now, I would lose control. And this was my only chance to win this game. I didn't sleep until the morning. All the time I sat in a chair in the corner of the bedroom, thinking about what I had read. I had no clear plan, just one thought. I had to find out more. If I suddenly confronted her with questions, she would just deny it, making up new excuses. No, I had to collect evidence, everything that will confirm my suspicions. The next day, Emily acted as if nothing had happened. Her voice was warm as always when she spoke. "Can you take Lily to school? I'm going to be a little late today. I have another client meeting." I nodded and forced a smile. I wanted to scream, smash the plate, or at least express how angry I was. But I just said, "Of course, don't worry." We spent the morning as usual. Breakfast with Lily, a few jokes that she loved. But something had changed. Even Lily felt it, because she asked, "Dad, why are you so sad?" I hid my emotions behind a big smile. "No, everything is fine, princess." Meanwhile, in my head, I was already making a plan. When I got home after dropping Lily off at school, I decided to check on some things. Her laptop. It was almost the first thing I did. Emily always left it on the kitchen table, just like today. Opening the screen, I felt a strange discomfort. She was always careful with passwords, but this time, the laptop was unlocked. My heart was pounding. At first, I didn't know what to look for, but then I remembered the name from the message, Ben. I entered it into the search. And there they were, dozens of emails. Some were formal, related to her work, but others were completely different. "Ben, I can't wait to see you again. It was incredible last time." My hand shook as I read on. Their correspondence was full of details about meetings, references to special places, their laughter at jokes I didn't know. One of the dates in the correspondence was the evening when she said she was going to a friend's house for a bachelorette party. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. Every word was like a knife in my heart. Closing my laptop, I sat down at my desk, clenching my hands into fists. I wanted to scream, to destroy something, but I held back. Lily needed me. And I needed me. At that moment, an idea was born. It would not be a simple confrontation. No, I'm going to make Emily feel the same pain as me. But for that, I had to wait. When she came home that night, I watched her every move. Her smile, her words were like a movie where an actor plays the role of the perfect wife. I saw right through her, but I didn't say anything. This game has just begun. The next few days were a test for me. Emily behaved as she always did. A warm, smiling, caring mother. She used to cook dinner, talk to me about work, and even try to keep up our usual evening conversations. But now it all seemed to me like a theater performance, the script of which she had learned by heart. I also played my part. I smiled, agreed, sometimes even joked. But something was burning inside me, destroying the version of myself that I knew before. Meanwhile, I collected evidence. Her routes, messages, even conversations with neighbors. One day, when I stayed home to work, I installed an app on her phone that copied all her messages and calls. It was terribly wrong, but I didn't care at the time. I wanted to know everything. A few days later, I received even more confirmation. Her correspondence with Ben was regular, and the tone of their correspondence became even more intimate. "I dream about our evening," she wrote. "I can still smell your scent." These words made me sick to my stomach. And so, I found him. One of the messages contained the exact address of a hotel in the city center. They were planning to meet that same week on Friday. This was my chance. I knew it would not just be a proof, it would be a scene. No, I didn't intend to go in there and make a scene with screaming. I had a different plan. On Friday, I spent the morning as usual. I got Lily ready for school, wished her a good day, and even spent a few hours in the garage doing some small things. Emily looked as usual. She kissed me before leaving and said, "I'm going to be late tonight. Working dinner." I looked her straight in the eye, and I had to make an effort not to laugh. "Don't worry," I replied. She just nodded and disappeared behind the door. And I stayed to wait. A few hours later, I went to the hotel where they had agreed to meet. I parked nearby, chose a spot where I could see the main entrance. And half an hour later I saw them. Emily and Ben. They were walking together, laughing. Her hand was touching his shoulder, and his was touching her back. She looked happy. Happier than I had seen her around me lately. I took a few pictures. They went up the stairs to the room. I had enough evidence, but it wasn't over yet. I dialed the number on my phone. "Good evening, is this the front desk? I would like to report an incident at your hotel. There are people in room 304 who appear to be doing something illegal." I did not say more. I didn't need a scene. It would create itself. 20 minutes later, I saw Emily and Ben being escorted to the exit. Their faces were tense, and she was quickly explaining something to the hotel staff, gesturing with her hands. I returned home, satisfied with the first step of my plan. Emily didn't know it was me, but she would soon realize. When Emily returned that evening, she looked depressed. Her smile, always so warm, now looked strained, and her eyes avoided mine. "How was the working dinner?" I asked, seemingly indifferently, but watching every detail. "I'm fine," she replied, shrugging her shoulders slightly. "Just a long day." I nodded and turned back to my tablet, pretending to be engrossed in my work. But a fire was burning inside me. Her lies now looked pathetic, and that only strengthened my decision. I would not just expose her. I would destroy her world. The next morning, while Emily and Lily were still asleep, I began the second phase of my plan. I carefully prepared everything to hurt her the way she had hurt me. First, I went to social media and found Ben's page. He looked typical a middle-aged man with a decent profile that didn't give anything away. But I found what I was looking for, his employer. Ben worked at a prestigious law firm. It was great. I created a new email account and sent his boss an email. "Good afternoon. I don't want to sensationalize, but I have some material that may seem compromising to your employee Ben Smith. His personal behavior may be in violation of your firm's ethical standards. You will find an example in the enclosure." I attached those photos from the hotel where Ben and Emily entered together, and I signed with a pseudonym. Let their corporate policy decide his fate. Next, I found a chat room Emily shared with several of her friends. It was a regular women's chat, but I knew that one of her friends, Karen, was known for her gossipy. In kind, I copied the messages between Emily and Ben that exposed their affair and forwarded them to Karen as if it were a mistake. A few minutes later, I deleted the account I sent it from, but I knew Karen would do her thing. Now I had to wait for the domino effect. The first blow came sooner than I expected. Already on Monday night, when Emily returned home, she looked pale. She barely said anything at dinner. Her eyes were absent. When Lily went to bed, I heard Emily in the bathroom calling someone. "What do you mean? I might be called to HR." She sounded alarmed. "This is a mistake, Ben." How could anyone know? I heard Ben's name and almost laughed. Her professional life was beginning to crack, but it was only the beginning. The next day, I saw Karen post in one of the closed Facebook groups. A post with hints and phrases like, "I'm so glad this didn't happen to me, but imagine finding out your friend is living a double life." I knew that this conversation would catch the attention of Emily's friends, and soon the news would reach the right ears. But the best was yet to come. The third stage of the plan was personal. I decided to organize a small party by inviting a few of our friends. Emily was surprised, but did not suspect anything. At the party, in the midst of laughter and music, I turned on the TV, saying that I had a video of Lily's birthday party that I wanted to show. Everyone sat down, waiting to see something nice. But the same photos from the hotel appeared on the screen. "It's not what you think," Emily screamed, but it was too late. A dead silence reigned in the room. The room was frozen, as if after an explosion. Everyone in the room was looking at the screen, where photos of Emily and Ben told a story without words. Their smiles, their looks, their body language, everything betrayed an intimacy that should not have existed between a married woman and another man. Emily froze, her face turning ashen white. She stood by the sofa, clutching the hem of her dress. Her eyes darted from me to our friends, who were shocked, confused, but most importantly disappointed. "Jason, what is this? How could you?" Her voice was trembling, but not because of shock. It was fear. I slowly rose from my chair, taking a step closer. "What is this?" "It's true, Emily," I said in an even tone, but with a noticeable coldness in my voice. "You wrote this story yourself. I just decided to give it the audience it deserved." She turned to the screen again, where another photo appeared, their faces close up. He was touching her hand, and she was smiling like she hadn't smiled at me in a long time. One of the friends coughed, trying to break the eerie silence. Karen, always the talkative one, seemed to be preparing to say something, but couldn't muster the words. Only Tim, our neighbor, who had always been straightforward, muttered, "It's terrible." Emily took a step toward me, her eyes glistening with tears. "Jason, it's not what you think. It's It was a mistake. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. Tell me. I could barely contain my bitter laughter. Tell me that you lied to me. To our daughter? That you spent our days together. I gestured to the screen. While I worked and Lily asked why you didn't sing her to sleep. Her tears were streaming down her cheeks, but I didn't care. I remembered every night when I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, knowing that she was elsewhere. Jason, I know I made a mistake. But please think of Lily. That was the last straw. About Lily? My voice rose, and I saw her startle. The only thing you've been thinking about is yourself, Emily. Your fun, your tiredness. But don't worry, I've already thought about Lily. I turned to our friends. You all know me, you know our family. And now you know the truth. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm filing for divorce. Emily fell on the couch, covering her face with her hands. Jason, please. No, Emily, I interrupted sharply. There will be no forgiveness. When the guests started to leave, they gave me sad but understanding looks. Some tried to say something in support, but I just nodded silently. Emily remained sitting on the couch, looking defeated. This was the second act of my plan, but the main action was still to come. The next morning, I prepared for the final blow. I made an appointment with a lawyer to discuss the divorce, and at the same time I drafted a letter to her employer. In it, I described her lie in detail, attached evidence, and asked how it fit into their ethical standards. But it was not the end. I left her a note on my way out. A few simple words. Emily, you betrayed our family. And now you will feel what it is like to lose everything. For the next few days, Emily was a shadow of herself. She walked around the house as if she had lost everything that had ever made sense. Her phone was no longer tied to her hand, but I knew it wasn't out of remorse. She was afraid that I was already in control. And it was true. I didn't talk to her except for Lily's sake. All our conversations were formal and cold. I noticed how she flinched every time my phone rang or when someone knocked on the door. Her world was slowly cracking under the pressure of my actions, and that was just the beginning. On Wednesday, I received an email from her employer. They thanked me for providing the information and informed me that an internal investigation has been launched. I imagined them calling her into the office, sitting in front of her with the evidence, and asking her if this behavior met their standards. I knew that her career was everything to her, and now that part of her life was also in jeopardy. The same day I called Lily's school. I asked about the possibility of transferring her to another school closer to my new place of residence. I wanted Lily to be protected from this chaos, from the gossip that had started to spread around the city. That evening, I walked into the kitchen where Emily was sitting with a cup of tea. She looked up at me, looking exhausted. Jason, we need to talk, she began, but I raised my hand, silencing her. Talk? You want to talk after you destroyed our family? My words were icy. No, Emily. The only thing we're going to discuss now is the details of our divorce. She held her breath, and then said almost in a whisper, You don't understand. I made a mistake, but I still love you. It wasn't even funny. Do you love me? You cheated on me in hotel rooms while I was playing Lego with our daughter. Is that your love? I lost my way, Jason. She raised her voice, but then fell back into tears. It was a mistake. I was weak. Weak. I leaned closer to her, looking directly into her eyes. Selfish. Not weak. You had a choice, and you chose yourself. But now you don't have a choice anymore. She was silent, confused, because she realized that I was no longer the man she could deceive or manipulate. Over the weekend, I struck one last chord. It was a message for Ben. I found his number among the saved contacts on Emily's phone. A simple message. We should meet. I have something that will interest you. The next day, he showed up at our local cafe, clearly nervous. I was sitting at a table in the corner, with a cup of coffee in front of me. When he approached, I gestured to the chair across from me. "Who are you?" he began, trying to remain calm. "I am the husband of the woman you spent the last few months with," I answered, not looking away. Ben flinched as if from a blow. "Listen, I didn't know she was married." "Don't lie, Ben," I interrupted. "You knew everything. And now everything you built is falling apart. I sent copies of our conversations to your bosses. Perhaps you should prepare your resume." He clenched his fists, but I knew he wouldn't do anything. He'd lost the game before he even started. "What do you want?" he wheezed. "Nothing. You've already gotten what you deserve." I stood up, leaving him in the cafe, his face ashen pale as Emily's had been that night. Now everything was in motion. All the threads that held her life together were breaking one by one. But this was only part of what I intended to do. They both paid the price for their actions. Emily lost her career. Her reputation with friends and acquaintances was ruined. Ben, as expected, was reprimanded by his superiors and, from what I heard, found himself out of a job. I should have felt satisfied, but for some reason I didn't. For the past weeks, I was like a ghost, existing only for revenge, and now that my mission was over, I was enveloped in emptiness. Lily became the only thread that kept me on the surface. I spent more time with her, tried to compensate for her mother's absence. But even she felt that something was wrong. "Dad, why is Mom sad?" "She cries all the time," she asked once when we were painting together. I stopped, holding the brush in my hand. Her voice was full of care, sincere childlike love, and it split me in half. "She made a mistake, my daughter," I answered, trying to gather myself. "But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you." Lily nodded, but her eyes were sad, filled with the deep pain I was so afraid of causing her. That was the moment when everything started to change. Every night when I went to bed, reviewing all my actions, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was no longer. It was about me or Emily. It was about Lily. And instead of shielding her from the pain, I was feeding it. That night I made a decision. The next day I came home earlier than usual and found Emily in the living room. She was sitting wrapped in a blanket, hugging a cup of tea. Her eyes were red and tired. She looked broken. I sat down opposite her, and she flinched as if from an unexpected sound. "Emily, we need to talk," I began, and fear appeared in her eyes. "Jason, if you want to go over it again," she started, but I raised my hand. "No, that's not why I'm here." She fell silent, confused. "This applies to Lily. She needs both of us. She needs normal, loving parents, even if we can't be together." Her lips trembled, and she tried to say something, but the words did not come. "I can't hate you anymore, Emily," I continued. "It's eating me up, and it's eating everything that's left between us. I did a lot of things to hurt you, and yes, you deserved it. But it didn't make me happy. It destroyed me." She bowed her head, and the first tears rolled down her face. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I added, looking at her directly, "but I am asking for peace. For us. For Lily." Emily was sobbing, her shoulders shaking. For the first time in a long time, I saw her as a person, not an enemy. "Jason, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry for me," I said quietly. "Be sorry for Lily." The next few weeks were difficult, but filled with a small amount of hope. Emily no longer tried to make excuses or repair our marriage. She silently accepted the decision to divorce, and was willing to cooperate to make the process as less traumatic as possible for Lily. We agreed to live for the sake of our daughter. It was not easy. Every day felt like walking on thin ice, where every wrong step could destroy everything again. But we both tried. I saw Emily trying to be a better mother, giving Lila all her free time, and it made me reconsider my rage. One evening I was walking home from work when I saw something that made me stop. Emily and Lily were sitting in the garden, laughing at some joke I couldn't hear. Lily hugged her mom, and Emily looked happy for the first time in a long time. I felt a strange tightness in my chest. It was almost like before. Almost, but not quite. I didn't know what made me approach them. "What are you up to?" I asked, sounding suspicious. "Dad." Lily jumped up to hug me. "Mom and I were talking about how funny you were falling into the water at the picnic." I smiled, although the memory tasted bitter. That day seemed so far away, from a life that now seemed alien. Emily looked at me quietly, her eyes full of gratitude but also fear. She seemed afraid that I might ruin this moment. But I didn't want to. "Were you laughing at me?" I asked, picking Lily up in my arms. "Of course," she replied, giggling. "It was hilarious." I looked at Emily, and she looked down, smiling only at the corners of her lips. There was something unusual about that moment. Something almost painful. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, I decided to talk to Emily again. She was sitting on the couch, holding a cup of tea. I noticed her watching me intently as I sat down next to her. "Jason, is there something you want to say?" Her voice was quiet, timid. I was silent for a long time before finally answering. "I don't know what will happen next. But we both have to do this for Lily's sake." "I know," she whispered, "and I will try." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of pain and relief. Maybe we could never get back what we lost. But maybe we could create something new for her sake. A few months later, our lives stabilized. Emily and I signed the divorce papers, and although it was a difficult moment for both of us, we knew it was the right thing to do. We agreed to share custody of Lily, so that she would not feel abandoned by either of us. Everything looked normal on the outside. But there was a burden inside me, something that did not give me peace. One day, when I was picking Lily up from school, she asked me an unexpected question. "Dad, do you still love Mom?" I almost missed a traffic light when I heard it. I turned off the radio and looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her small face was serious, her eyes waiting for an answer. "Why do you ask, baby?" I asked softly, trying to find the right words. "Because my mom often cries when she thinks I don't see. She says she's sorry, but I don't understand why you're not together anymore." My heart clenched. How could I explain to my child what even I did not fully understand? "Lily, I will always love your mom because she gave you to me," I said after a pause. "But sometimes people make mistakes, and that changes everything. But if she's sorry, why can't you forgive her?" Her question was so simple that it threw me off balance. I didn't answer anything. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. Lily's words kept coming back to me. She was right. I was so focused on my rage, on revenge, that I didn't give myself the opportunity to even think about forgiveness. I looked at the ceiling for a long time, trying to imagine a life where I could let go of my pain. What would it change? What would it give me, Lily, Emily? In the morning, as usual, I made breakfast for Lily. When she came out of her room, I saw that she was carrying something in her hands. A drawing. "This is all of us together," she said, unfolding the paper. The picture was of our family, me, her, and Emily, all holding hands, with a big sun shining over us. My heart shuddered. Lily never gave up hope that we could still be together. That evening, I asked Emily to talk to me. She seemed surprised, even a little scared, but she agreed. We sat down in the kitchen, where we used to spend many happy evenings. Emily, I don't know what's going to happen, I began, avoiding her gaze. But maybe for Lily's sake we can try again. Not right now. But someday. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from pain, but from hope. Jason, I don't deserve this. Maybe not, I replied, but our daughter deserves it. Giving a second chance did not mean forgetting, and I understood that. But it all started small. We started going to Lily's school events together, attending her sports classes together. We no longer looked like strangers to each other, even though we were not close. Emily was cautious. She seemed afraid to take an extra step or say something that could destroy the delicate balance we had achieved. One Saturday morning, Lily and I decided to make breakfast. She suggested that we invite her mother. "Let's surprise Daddy, Mom," she said, dragging Emily into the kitchen. Emily smiled in embarrassment and helped us. We laughed as Lily tried to break the egg, which flew all over the table. It was the first time in a long time that I felt something like warmth between us, as if life had allowed us to heal our wounds at least a little. A few months later, when we were having dinner together after Lily's performance in the school play, she asked us both an unexpected question. Why can't we all live together like we used to? Emily stared at her plate, and I held my breath. We exchanged a brief glance. Lily, it's complicated, I began, but she interrupted me. You don't fight anymore. You even laugh together. Could this be a sign that everything might be okay? These words sounded so simple, but they hit me right in the heart. I looked at Emily, and this time she didn't look away. That evening, Emily and I stayed in the kitchen after Lily fell asleep. She carefully placed a cup of tea on the table and looked at me. Jason, I don't want to cause you any more pain. If you can't forgive me, I understand. But, I'm ready to change. I was silent, thinking about her words. This was not a decision that could be made overnight. I knew the road to trust would be long and difficult. But looking at her, I felt for the first time that her words were sincere. It won't be easy, I finally said. I know, she replied. I don't promise that I can forgive everything, but I'm willing to try for Lily's sake. She nodded, and for the first time, a glimmer of hope appeared on her face. We began to carefully build a new life. Not what we had before, but better than what we had recently. It was small steps, having dinners together, talking about working days, reminiscing about old times. I didn't know if we could get back the love we once had, but that was no longer the main thing for me. What mattered was that Lily could see us together again, smiling and sincere. One evening, when we were all playing a board game together, Lily suddenly said, "You know, I made a wish when I blew out the candles on my birthday." "What wish?" Emily asked, smiling. "To make us all happy. And you know what? It seems to be coming true." Emily and I looked at each other. Her eyes were shining, and this time they were not tears of sadness. I felt something inside me loosen, like the last barrier between what was and what could have been had fallen. This story began with pain, but it could have ended with hope. We were not perfect, but we were a family. Sometimes that is enough.